If you're only blaming Cuba's government right now, you're missing something important. And before anyone jumps in, this is not apologia. Cuba does have some serious internal problems. Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International have both documented repression, arrest of critics, and limits on political freedom. So no, this isn't a Cuba is perfect argument. It isn't. But here's the part that almost always gets left out. The way a government behaves is shaped by the conditions it's under. And Cuba has been under extreme, sustained economic pressure for decades, including restrictions that make it extremely difficult for Cuba to access global financial systems or trade on normal terms. Because what's happening in Cuba right now isn't just some abstract failure of governance. Reuters has been reporting on repeated national blackouts, affecting around 10 million people, fuel shortages, hospital strain, and an energy system pushed to the brink. In March alone, not an April Fool's video by the way, Reuters described the grid collapsing multiple times in the middle of a US oil blockade after Washington cut off Venezuelan exports to Cuba and pressured other countries not to supply fuel. And this pressure is not accidental. If you go back to the US State Department's own archives, there's a 1960 memorandum by Lester Mallory that lays it out plainly. The goal was to weaken Cuba economically, deny it money and supplies, and bring about, quote, hunger, desperation, and overthrow of government. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's official policy in their own words. So when people point to suffering in Cuba as proof that the system failed, the question is, failed under what conditions? Because you can't seriously evaluate how a system performs while also ignoring a decades-long strategy designed to make life harder there. And again, that doesn't justify everything the government does. It can still be repressive. It can still make unoptimal economic decisions. Some Cubans themselves criticize that. But sanctions are not some background detail in this story. They are one of the main conditions shaping this story. What also gets lost in the conversation is that Cuba is not just a country in crisis. It's also a country with a long track record of international medical work and public health innovation. The Pan American Health Organization, part of the WHO, recognized Cuba's Henry Reeve Medical Brigade for treating millions of people across multiple countries and helping to save tens of thousands of lives. Reuters has also reported that Cuba produces the majority of its own vaccines domestically. And inside the country, what you see is a population that has adapted to decades of scarcity, shortages, and external pressure in ways that are genuinely difficult to sustain. That doesn't make the situation acceptable, but that does point to a level of resistance that rarely gets acknowledged when people talk about Cuba from the outside. And globally, the US position is actually very isolated. In 2024, the UN General Assembly voted 187-2 to condemn the embargo again, with only the United States and Israel opposing it. So when people talk about Cuba, yes, criticize the government, that matters. But if you leave out the sanctions, the oil restrictions, and the deliberate attempt to produce economic pressure, then what you're giving people is not the full picture. It's a simplified one, and a politically convenient one.